Good morning and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. I'm your host, Udwa Kamimo. We're now in our second year of devolution. For some counties, the system has been a boon, sending much-needed resources and attention to previously neglected areas. For others, the system has a litany of problems in areas such as education, health, and now, as we know, security. To reflect on the pains, promises, and potential of devolution, we have as today's guest Professor Charles Wanyande of the Constitution Implementation Commission. He is responsible for the devolution theme at the CIC. The Council of Governors also requested a slot in the show, but have been unable to honor their own request and commitment. Mutegi Njau is also in the studio with me. David Makali is still away on leave. Good morning.
The gentleman is called Peter.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Peter Wanyande, which is really embarrassing because you taught me. So thank you very much for coming. We'll start with the good. What has devolution achieved?
Thank you. To answer the question, one really needs to look at the objectives of devolution, which are found in, I think, is Article 174 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. There are about 9 objectives, but the most important and relevant, what you have asked, is the provision of services to the people, service delivery to the people of Kenya, and in a manner that is easily accessible. To that extent, one can say that there have been really successes as well as challenges.
Let's focus on the successes to begin with.
We want to focus on successes. Well, you then need to look at specific counties because there are differences in terms of successes from one county to another. But generally speaking, most counties have been able to take their responsibilities, the functions that have been given, such as, for example, agriculture. They are implementing that. Many have been able to open up rural roads that were, kind of neglected in the past. A number of counties tell us that they have been able now to operationalize the health sector much more efficiently. Drugs are available in a lot of counties now. We get that from counties. In fact, a lot of health services have been improved. Only yesterday we had a report by the Commission on Revenue Allocation at a meeting at the Judicial Training Institution, where they indicated to us the changes that have actually occurred, positive changes that have occurred in the health sector. Ambulances have been bought in many counties. They have attempted to modernize a lot of health services. In places like Kisii, for example, they have reported that there have been dialysis machines now bought and are operational and so on. So there has been, in short, a very clear attempt by counties to actually provide services in those areas that have been allocated or assigned to counties.
Okay, let's come to the problems, because you talk about the health sector, ambulances, drugs now available, but we see medical workers on strike, complaining about pay, complaining about not having the tools they need to carry out their work. The same with education. So how is it that we have service delivery on the one hand, but we're not able to deliver on the human resources on the other?
Yeah, you see, the strikes in the health sector have mainly been about sometimes delay in paying the health workers their salaries.
Actually, that's a failure.
That is a failure. That is a failure, but that is a failure that is perhaps explained by the manner in which financial management is carried out. And you will remember that financial management is not just a function of the county governments. County governments rely on disbursements from the, as it were, the national treasury, and that sometimes we are told delays. Reasons for that may vary, but that is different from the counties actually carrying out the function that they are given. So one needs to sort out that delay in disbursement of funds and so on as a separate problem.
In health, there is a controversy over the government went and bought equipment, which they say they fucked up with putting advertisements in the newspaper showing the equipment they bought for counties. The counties are saying, no, we were not involved. We have no people. You bring the equipment, there is no training. Has that matter been resolved, and why was it done that way? And what's the Commission's view about that?
When you say government, I suppose you mean the national government.
Yes.
I think what we need to bear in mind is that the health services is a devolved function.
Yes.
Apart from the national referral hospitals.
Yes.
As a county function, counties surely must be involved in the procurement, in the purchase of any equipment that will assist them in providing health services. If that was not done, if the national government bought this equipment without consulting the
not
county,
if, it did.
I said if they did without consulting.
Oh, without consulting.
Without consulting.
Which they say they were not consulted.
Yes, that was definitely a mistake, because you do not provide equipment to a government that is responsible for running that equipment when they were not involved. That is wrong. That is certainly wrong. So what should have happened is that there should have been consultations, and indeed the Intergovernmental Relations Act provides for these kinds of arrangements where any level of government can, in consultation with the other level of government, agree on certain modalities of carrying out even functions assigned to that particular level of government. In this case, therefore, the national government ought to have consulted the county government so that they agree, because the county governments would be right in saying, for example, if you give us this equipment and we don't even have storage for them, what do we do? If you give us this equipment and we do not have money for maintaining them, what do we do? If you give us this equipment and we do not have trained personnel to actually operate this equipment, what do we do? Hence the need for cooperation. In any case, our devolved system of government in Article 6 clearly says that this is a cooperative arrangement. It is a cooperative system of government. The national and the county must cooperate in whatever they do. So we are saying at CIC that it is a mistake if the counties were not consulted and if they did not agree to that arrangement.
So what happened to equipment?
What happens to the equipment?
The equipment is yes, but counties say no. So what happens?
That is the question we are asking, actually. What would counties do with them if they find that they cannot use them, for example?
How does this, what does this say about the state of intergovernmental relations then?
I think, first of all, the Intergovernmental Relations Act is very clear. It provides for very clear mechanisms through which these two levels of government would operate on matters that affect both of them, that is mutual relations. If this were followed, really there would be no problem. So what I'm saying is that there could be cases, there might be cases in which one level of government has not respected the mechanisms provided for in the Intergovernmental Relations Act. That is where the problem then arises.
But the question I'm asking you is, what is the current state of intergovernmental relations? If we go by what we see in the news, read in the papers, it's a strained one. The two sets of governments don't seem to get along. They're constant turf battles. There's jostling for space. Now, on the one hand, you could say that these are growing pains. On the other hand, you could say it's politicians politicking. What is your assessment as a CIC, seeing as your mandate is to facilitate the implementation of the Constitution?
I would say this: the first year of implementation, there was a lot of tensions between the national and the county government. Indeed, there was also a lot of tension between the Senate and the county government, including tensions between the Senate and the governors. That was very problematic in the first year of implementation. Part of it was really a failure by the different institutions to respect their respective mandates. We found situations in which, for example, the Senate wants to be involved in the basically implementation issues, when the role of the Senate is very clear. It is lawmaking, It is protecting the interests of the counties and their government. So there were these instances where one institution did not respect the mandate of the other institution, therefore tended to, as it were, want to extend its powers to other, and that created problems. With time, however, we are seeing a situation where these kinds of what we call tough wars are beginning to subside, and this is a good sign. And we at the Commission have always advised the various institutions to adhere to their mandates and to respect the institutional and functional mandates of other institutions as required indeed by Article 189 of the Constitution.
There was an issue about personnel. County government took over a large number of employees from the local governments. And there was an issue about whether they are trained, were qualified, and the county governments wanting to recruit people who could work with them. There's butter has lingered on. This is the second year. I don't know whether it's been resolved and how it's going to be.
Yes, that has been a major problem. You see, counties were advised at the very beginning that they needed to absorb former employees of the now defunct local authorities.
Yes.
And with time, then make decisions about fresh recruitments and so on and so forth. It has actually created a very big problem for counties in terms of the fact that, one, it contributes to the huge wage bill for counties. And two, many counties have reported to us as CIC that some of the employees that they inherited from the local authorities really did not have the kind of skills and training that would be useful in this new dispensation, this new system of government. But we as CIC took up this matter very seriously, and we got in touch with both the county public service boards as well as the Public Service Commission and the relevant ministries of the national government, and a task force was established involving several institutions that was working out ways in which this can actually be resolved. So it is something that is actually being addressed and very effectively.
What would you say then about, because we've talked about, the county government, you've talked about the Senate overreaching itself, but the governors themselves, and it's unfortunate that they asked to be here and then didn't show up. We've seen squabbles of all sorts. Role of deputies not clearly defined, deputies being called, was it spare tires? Deputies and governors fighting, speakers being impeached. What would you say about the handling of, speakers being locked out of their offices as well? What would you say about how at the county level the governors have handled their executive teams?
You know, the Constitution is very clear. Let's talk about the relation between the governor and the deputy. Deputy governors have a responsibility. They perform functions actually assigned to them by the governors. And
they complain that nothing's been assigned to them.
Well, that is a management issue, and it's not a constitutional issue because the Constitution is very clear. So if a governor, and it's not in all cases, by the way, there are some counties where the governors and the deputy governors are quite happy. So it's a question of a management issue, and those governors should begin to learn how to manage the relation between them and the deputies. So that is really not a constitutional issue. The Constitution is very clear, right? And what we say at CIC is that so long as institutions, so long as various players in the various institutions respect the constitutional provisions and the provisions in the law regarding the relationship between various actors, there ought really be no problem. There really ought to be no problem. The problem is sometimes these actors ignore the law, they ignore the provisions of the Constitution and want to do things perhaps take into account political expediency and so on.
So what redress does one have in situations such as those?
Well, sensitization is one obvious solution. The governors must be, not just governors, all the actors actually in this. And by the way, it is both the national and the county level government that needs to work together to follow the law and to follow the constitutional provision.
Letting go back to intergovernmental relations, is there any schedule of meetings or forums that they meet to implement that so that we don't have those squabbles? Are there formal ways of conducting consultations?
In terms of institutions, there are several. First of all, between the national and the county governments, there is the summit, which is a forum created by the law to enable the president.
That's only once a year or twice?
A minimum of twice a year. A minimum does not say
I
they
think
meet
your
twice.
question, if I'm not mistaken, right? But you also coming to the issue of governance.
Yes, I'm coming to that. Because you see, the reason why I start with that is that
that's the top one.
Devolution in the Kenyan context involves two levels of government.
Yes.
So when we are talking about devolution, we should not just look at the county government alone, because that leaves out an equally important component of our devolved system. And that's a mistake we make all the time. We focus too much on the county government and forget about the national government. But let me go back to your point. We have the summit.
Yes.
It's required to meet at least twice a year. It can meet more times. To resolve any misunderstandings, disputes between the national, misunderstandings between the national and the county government. Provide that platform. We then have the Council of Governors, which is a platform in which all the counties meet to compare, as it were, their progress they're making, the challenges they're facing, areas that require improvement, and so on and so forth. So that is there. So that provides that. Then we have now the Intergovernmental Technical Relations Committee, which is going to take over from the Transitional Authority when the term of the transition comes to an end. That is also a forum that allows for those kinds of interactions and sorting out problems between, again, the two levels of government, because it's truly intergovernmental, right? Then we have, at the county level specifically, governors have an opportunity, if they wish, to meet with the Senate, with the MCAs, that is the county assemblies. And so there are all kinds of institutions that allow for these kinds of issues.
But then how do you resolve the problems, given that some governors have faced hostile county assemblies, they're not getting on with their deputies, they may not be getting on with their speakers. What forum exists to resolve those inconsistencies? Beyond common sense.
Beyond common sense. Let's be a little bit more specific. If there is a conflict between a governor and the county assembly, we need to find out what is the source of this conflict.
But the governors would tell you that their political opponents are sponsoring people within the county assembly to frustrate their efforts, to sabotage them.
For us at CIC, the point is this, that MCAs have very specific roles provided for them in the Constitution. They make law, they provide oversight, and they represent the people, that is the wards, the residents of the wards from which they are elected. Now, part of the problem we have noticed, and we have found this from discussions with both the MCAs and even the governors, is that many county assembly members have taken this oversight role a bit too far. One thing that they have failed to recognize is that oversight is a collective institutional responsibility. MCAs sit in the assembly, receive reports of how the executive in the assembly is functioning, interrogate those reports, summon, if you like, the relevant CEC responsible for a particular issue they want to discuss. So the oversight is as an institution. In some instances, we have found situations where an MCA, as an individual MCA, wants to oversight an individual CEC.
County executive member.
Yes. In some instances, we have been told that an MCA goes to these revenue collection centers and wants to find out whether the officer in charge of collecting revenue is actually doing the right thing. That is not the oversight. That is supervision. And supervision is an implementation function. It's an administrative function that belongs to the executive arm of government. Those sometimes create problems to the executive. We have had
before you carry on, for the benefit of our viewers and MCAs who might be watching, how do you distinguish between oversight and supervision?
I've just explained. Oversight is a situation where you have, for example, passed a law, you have passed a policy, you have approved a project to be implemented by the executive. So the MCA or the Assembly has passed those laws, projects, and so on for the implementation. It is a responsibility, an oversight responsibility of the MCA to find out whether those projects have actually been implemented by the executive in accordance with what they approved, in accordance with the law, and so on. What they do is they receive reports, they require reports that tells them, you passed this, this is a project, we have implemented it, this is how we did it. They then scrutinize as an institution. They scrutinize the report, and if they find that there are any gaps, any problems with those reports, they then summon the executive member responsible for that particular function. That is oversight. But when you go out into the field and start asking people, have you done this, have you done this, why are you doing like this, that is not oversight, that is supervision.
What about the situations where the relationship between the governor and the MCAs is completely ruined? Say, for instance, the case of Embu and Makwene. The governor of Embu survives today because of court case. Otherwise, the MCAs and with him, they're out. Yes. Same thing with the governor, where in Makwene, where they have signed signatures, they want the assembly dissolved. How do you resolve that? Well, it becomes untenable. They can't work together.
Let me put it this way, that when, like the cases we have cited, Makwene, Embu, it means that the county government is actually not operating. It is not functioning because the two arms of government are not working together. They cannot work together if they, like the experience we have in Makwene and in Embu. So that is a major challenge. But the point is this: counties must recognize that there is only one government at the county level, known as the county government, in this case of Makwene. It is divided into two arms: the legislative arm, that is the county assembly, and the executive arm. But it is just one. For this county governments to work, the two must cooperate, the two must consult. If they don't, it is the government that will not work. It is not that the governor is not working, or the executive, or the MCA, or the assembly is not working. It is that government. And therefore, it's the citizens who will suffer. Now, there are provisions both in the Constitution and in law for dealing with these kinds of problems. Indeed, the Constitution provides that if a county government cannot operate, cannot function, cannot provide services, there's a provision for intervention by the national government, and in particular the president, to actually resolve the issue, including dissolution of a county government, following, of course, laid down processes, which they started, for example, in Makwene. You know, you establish a committee, there is, some tribunal to investigate, the citizens must demand that the government be dissolved, and so on and so forth. So there's a procedure for it, provided for in both the Constitution and in the law.
There's the other side of the coin, where you have MCAs, they're puppets, and they don't do the overseeing. They don't do what you are saying they should do, because the governor decided that to accede to what they want. So that you have a county MCAs who don't ask questions, they don't oversee, they don't oversight, they just sit there and wait for goodies from the governor.
Well, the Constitution did not envisage that MCAs will be puppets.
It is happening in counties.
It just means that those MCAs are not doing their job. They are not performing their role. They were elected to pass law, they were elected to oversight the executive in the counties and to represent the people, meaning that they aggregate, they bring the problems of the people, the challenges, the issues that the people have to the assembly. It is discussed, and then decisions are made. If they are not doing that, well...
Why is Mwananchi going to go? Wanjiku? What will Wanjiku do in that situation? Why you have puppet MCAs?
Wanjiku has every power to actually recall these MCAs. Wanjiku has every power not to re-elect these MCAs come 2017. Wanjiku has every power to actually, in an organized manner, summon these MCAs and put them to task.
How would Wanjiku do that?
Work?
How that work?
Yes. We're clear about the recall, we're clear about elections and choice, but summoning MCAs and putting them to task, how does one go about that?
Very simple, very straightforward. First of all, these people are elected. The MCAs are elected by residents of a county, right? We have all manner of associations in counties, even in wards. These people have every right, that's why I say in a collective manner, to summon the MCA.
So a town hall, a baraza, anything?
Yes, there are all kinds of citizen forums provided for even in the law that the citizens can say, we would like to have a meeting with our MCA, we would like to have a meeting with our MP. This is something that we as citizens have actually failed to take advantage of, including, I must say, fairly educated people.
I don't think this. I saw a video in the Facebook.
Yes.
It's a current running. The governor of Meru, he's in a public meeting. And somebody signed up to ask him questions. And then he completely belittles them. Mm-hmm. The fellow is completely made powerless. He can't. Who are you to ask me questions? You don't know anything. What?
You know,
where is Wajiko now? That powerful governor being asked questions. It's a video clip running around. How does Monenchi now deal with that?
You know, I'm not even talking about the public rally, because in a public rally you can see very little.
Yes.
I'm talking about these citizen centers that have been established in counties. I'm talking about even civil society organizations within a county or within a ward can actually organize a meeting. Are we suggesting that MCAs, governors are so powerful that they cannot be responsive to the people who elected them? They can be summoned. It's just that we have not done it.
Within the context still of intergovernmental relations, we recently had the list of shame published. Some governors featured on that. And there's some who said that what the president did was wrong, they shouldn't have been mentioned, that there were other ways to have done this. What is your view as the CIC?
You're talking about the
corruption, the list of corruption.
The list of people claimed to be corrupt.
Yes.
Let us understand the context. First of all, the president is required, I think, by Article 132, to address the two houses of parliament on the state of the nation. For a president to do that, he must have information and data on what he wants to address. For example, if he thinks that in his address he should talk about corruption, he needs to have information. I think the context in which this list came about, our understanding is that the president must have gone to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to ask them, or summon them to ask them, what is the status of corruption? What is going on as far as you are concerned? This is your mandate. What is the advice you can give me? What information can you give me so that when I address the nation, I have facts? I think this is the context in which this happened. Now, citizens of this country have a right to get information. They have a right to get information. Now, when the president, therefore, addresses the nation on matters of corruption in his State of the Nation address, I think there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. Now, whether that list was a final list, whether it was a draft, surely you and I cannot know. It is the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission that can tell citizens of this country that that was a draft. And if it was a draft, why did they hand it over to the president? That is the question we would ask. So one wants to assume that they gave it to the president because that is what they thought was the authentic list of people who are involved in corruption. So to that extent, really there was no problem at all. What is important, however, is that all this, the fight against corruption must be done within the law. The fight against corruption must be done by the institutions established to deal with those issues. I think in this country we must, under this new dispensation, recognize that there are institutions created, some by the Constitution, some by statute, to deal with specific issues affecting the country. If we allow these institutions to deal with those mandates, I think we'll have very little problems. So that is our position as CIC. It must be done within the law. We must respect the institutional mandates, and if that is respected, we will have very little problem.
What about when we have lawyers like CIC and the state law office differing in the same law? Say, for instance, the Attorney General says governors, whether the state officers, they must step aside. And then you guys say, no, you must follow the law, these are elected people, they stay.
You know, First of all, stepping aside is a respectable governance practice, that when you as a leader is involved or accused of violating the law, the constitution, of lack of integrity, it is just common sense, good governance practice to actually step aside.
And suppose I'm mannerless and I say, I don't care.
Then we follow the process, we follow the law. That is why the CIC always says, let us then follow the law. Let us not do things outside the law. The appointed officials, the president has every power to tell them, you step aside, and they'll step aside. By the way, if you remember, the president requested these people to step aside. He did not order them, because he cannot order them to step aside. He requested them, which was fine.
And they ignored his request.
Yeah, they ignored. It was a request. There was no law that says the president will ask these people to
okay, so let's come back then to the Council of Governors. Have they failed us in then not suggesting to their members to step aside?
Yeah.
Have they failed us in terms of not asking their members to step aside?
Teaching them good manners. That
because if there's any perceived infringement of what they see as their turf, we will hear about it. They'll be shouting from the rooftops. But when it comes to holding the governors accountable, there is silence.
The Council of Governors has a very specific role. It is not to hold the individual governors accountable. That is not their role at all, of the Council of Governors. The Council of Governors is an institution that provides governors of all the counties an opportunity to share their experiences, and to resolve conflicts that affect them, and particularly in relation also to the national government. Let us remember that each of these 47 governments, county governments, are distinct. They are distinct. The chairman of the Council of Governors is not the boss of governors, not at all. The point that they are distinct. They can actually ignore the Council of Governors because it's just a forum for sharing experiences. So they cannot, as a council, force a governor to step aside or to resign. No.
Okay, that's a good point to take a break on. This is Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV, and we're discussing devolution. How has it impacted your life? How has devolution impacted your county? Tell us what you think. Our SMS number is 22422, and our Twitter handle is @Cheche_TV. You can also tweet using the hashtag Cheche.